Good morning, everybody. So I want to talk about music libraries, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're going to talk about the two principal buckets of music licensing, or the two principal scenarios that often a composer is faced with when working with a music library. So we're going to talk about bucket number one. Bucket number one is you get approached by a library and they want you to submit tracks to them. The compensation is kind of vague in terms of what you're going to get paid, if you're going to get paid at all for the tracks that you're submitting. You have no idea what the library is getting paid for the use of their services. And what I mean by that is you have no idea what the broadcaster or the client that's using the music is paying the library for the services or the privilege of using the music that's contained within the library. You don't have any idea. There's no transparency around that. So your music goes into this black box, and then a year or two later, when you're looking at a royalty statement, you see, oh, my music's been used, and you get a royalty payment by the library. All right, vis-a-vis your PRO, BMI, ASCAP, SOCAN, whatever. That's bucket number one. Very vague. You do get a credit, great, but you really don't know how much money is being exchanged up front for the use of your music. This is very important. Now, in the contract, it might say that you're entitled to a split of licensing fees after expenses have been recouped. Well, guess what? If you are running a company, you have lots of expenses. You have your kids' college education to pay for, your mortgage, your car payment, your health insurance. Oh, and by the time that everything is paid for out of that bucket of front-end money you get as the library owner, there's no money left. None. Or if there's money left, there's a minimum kind of ceiling payout amount that you'll receive once you achieve that level of whatever it is use within the library's sort of construct, if that makes sense. So that's bucket number one. Very vague, very, questionable in terms of the efficacy of what's actually happening transactionally with your music. So that's bucket number one. Bucket number two, you're a composer who gets approached directly by a broadcaster or a music supervisor, and they want to do a deal with you directly for use of your music. Now, these are traditionally much harder deals to get, but they are more lucrative and more transparent. Generally speaking, when they're looking for music, and this is both scenarios have happened to me. So if you have questions or you want to make comments, please do in the comments section. I have found that I generally keep all of the writing, all of the publishing, and I get a really nice fee for the use of my music. And the royalty stream, as well as the fee, goes for, well, the fee's a one-shot deal, but it's usually a very good fee. And the royalty generated, because it's both publishing and writing, is quite, it can be quite lucrative, depending on the use and depending on where the music is. So that's bucket number two. And the reason I'm making this video is because I've stayed away for many, many years from music libraries. Initially, when I started writing music, I used libraries, and it was bucket one. And bucket one was a little more lucrative because there was terrestrial broadcasting, not streaming. So there was more money that you would get in the royalty stream. But I never did see a single penny of split licensing fees, never. Bucket number two, which I've been doing more frequently over the last decade, has been more difficult, but it's been a lot more lucrative. A lot more lucrative. So bucket number two is really based on your relationship, your reputation, things you've done, etc. Harder to do, but a lot more fun. So in my final analysis here, as it relates to whether or not you should music license, whether or not you should choose bucket one or bucket two, I'll break it down as follows. Bucket one is easier, but bucket one is not sustainable unless you're doing thousands of tracks. And I have a friend who actually did that. He wrote thousands of pieces of music over a period of a decade, and he's actually doing pretty well, but it's thousands of pieces, I'm not kidding, that he's sent into bucket one. But again, with bucket one, you have no idea how much the broker's making. So typical broker relationship is the fees up front. They tell you what it is, or if it changes from project to project, they let you know that, but they're very transparent with you. So if you're in a situation, any situation, where you're providing content for use in media and people are not being transparent with you, walk away. It's probably not worth your time. And unfortunately, that's the nature of this business. It's a bit of a black box, and people don't like talking about it, but I'm talking about it. And I just want everyone to know that everybody I've talked to who's a writer, a composer, who spent any time doing music licensing has dealt with this issue, and everybody has. And the question you have to ask yourself is, how much is your brand worth? And how much is your dignity worth? Those are really important questions. And I would just strongly recommend not spending too much time chasing down these very questionable, repositories. Now, the industry's changing a lot, and I'll make another video about that at some point. But I think it's important to understand two buckets. The broker bucket, you have no idea what deal is going on for the use of your music. And then bucket number two, directly between you and the client, whoever the client is. So hopefully this helps people have a better understanding of music licensing and why it's important to be skeptical.